So what I really called about broadly is the impotence from the Democratic leadership and the lack of the anger from them. Also, I wanted to say to Emma, please continue to start to mention how much bullshit the abortion exceptions are, because how do you prove rape when, how do you prove rape or incest when you don't have a child to like run paternity on and stuff like that? And what's the backlog on those rape kits?
Oh, yeah.
It takes forever, and not all rape is a lot of it is the he said, she said, and if the victim isn't believed, then you don't get an abortion?
Yeah, it's hard to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in situations where cops don't take rape seriously for the most part too. Like if it's two people in a room, unless there's a lot of evidence like a Brock Turner situation, it's really difficult, and those proceedings could take a while, and by then either the baby's born or you're like 7 or 8 months pregnant or something. It's just absurd. They're just trying to dilute the obvious immorality and barbarity of their position by even entertaining that. And then, I get bothered by the framing that it makes it seem like abortion in and of itself can only happen if there has been some sort of crime committed, because it is a moral failing and it's not, just another birth control option like everything else.
Right, and the fact that I still haven't heard anybody but AOC or Elizabeth Warren say the word abortion. It's bullshit.
Biden is terrified to say abortion.
Yep.
All of them are, and I don't. Maybe it's maybe it's just that generation of Democratic leaders who kind of cut their teeth during the Reagan era, but the Reagan and Clinton era, I guess. But it's like, where is the outrage? They're going to beg us for their vote.
I contend that you're right about that, and I appreciate the phone call. I've cited this. You can read this piece by Rebecca Traister about Dianne Feinstein. And there is a mentality that exists. Not all boomers, not all silent generation, not all great generation. Don't send me emails, okay? But, I've used this example before. What kind of music do you listen to? And I guarantee you, the majority of the music that you listen to, for your average person, comes from a specific era when music was most important to you, exciting to you. That may have been when you were in your teens, it may have been when you were in college, it may have been after college, whatever. And it forms your sensibility about music. You could still listen to other things, but and there are a group of Democratic leaders who came into politics in the late 80s, early 90s, who are operating on a completely warped perspective of what's going on. And, I had this conversation. I don't want to drag my dad, but we have had an ongoing argument really for 20 years since the Bush v. Gore about the Supreme Court. And I wanted to check in with him and how effed up was this? Well, they, he's a lawyer. Or he's not quite retired yet, but they were sort of, they have a derivation of originalism. I'm like, what? How does that work? A derivation of originalism. How's that? Well, okay. I mean, it's just sort of, they sort of use it when they want to. Yeah. And he goes, but these things work out. And this generation perceive the idea that things are going to work out as a law of nature.
Did I tell you I had the same exact conversation with my dad?
No.
Okay, same thing.
It is
when Roe was handed down. Sorry to throw him under the bus. The tide of history will. But I mean, I thankfully I was on a plane, because I think I would have sent a text with a lot of expletives if it wasn't the case when I got that text.
That notion. They grew up with the Warren Court.
Yeah.
They saw the Voting Rights Act pass. They saw women gain an enormous amount of rights relative to the where they were, and sort of the ability to enter into politics, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
They do not, and the biggest concern they have is getting in the way of the natural system that works things out.
Tides go in, tides go out, but in the end, it's still the ocean, man.
We don't want to interfere with that. And so you get like headlines, and granted, it's the headline, but it really does capture, I think, their perspective. NBC News, with pressures mounting, Biden thinks the Republicans will make his midterm case for him. And the idea that you can rely on your opposition to have so many unforced errors. I mean, this is the one thing you hear from Democrats all the way. You don't want to get in the way when you want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Yes, you do. But you want to give them enough rope. And sometimes that means not just like dangle the rope out there, but you want to put the rope in their hands. And in fact, you want to say to them, the rope is good for you. And you want to do stuff.
Provide them with a tree branch to hang themselves with.
And you need to get out there and do things.
Yeah.
Even if you can't change the material reality of these things, you need to be able to either change the immediate or future political implications of these things. I mean, we can go back to Merrick Garland. We can go back to before that. But just think about the implications. The Mitch McConnell keeping that seat open, I think, is probably the most underestimated and unreported factor in Donald Trump's election in 2016. A lot of different factors. I don't know if you can point to any single but that's a big one.
Anecdotally, I know sort of single-issue anti-choice voters who voted for Trump despite all of the personality stuff because of that reason.
Of course. And I'm open to all the other things, ranging from, Clinton's F-ups to Comey, to et cetera, whatever. And you could not change that. There was no world where Mitch McConnell wasn't going to keep that seat open and wasn't going to drive those Christian conservatives out to vote. But remember, Clinton loses by 60,000 votes over the course of 3 states. Barack Obama had it in his power to nominate Merrick Garland, couldn't force Mitch McConnell to have hearings. But 4 weeks later, he could have said, okay, I'm pulling Merrick Garland's nomination. Here's an African-American woman. You're not going to meet with her after 4 weeks? Here is a Latino man. You're not going to meet with him? Here's an African-American man. Here's an indigenous woman. Here is an Asian man. Here's an Asian woman. Here's a white woman. We'll be back around to a white guy, after 7 or 8 people. And what happens when you do that? One is people are talking about it in a way that nobody who was voting for Hillary Clinton was talking about it. What is 3 years later when they nominate Amy Coney Barrett and put her into place in 3 weeks? 3 weeks before an election. 3 weeks. Is it easy for Dianne Feinstein to go to those hearings? Is it easy for any of those Democratic senators to go to that hearings after you've had 8 nominees by Barack Obama get spit in the face by Mitch McConnell? How many organizations have been working on getting an African-American woman or man on the Supreme Court? An Asian, a Latino, an indigenous man or woman on the Supreme Court? An openly gay Supreme Court justice? A trans justice, if you want? Just in the activation of those groups, raising money, spending money, does that mitigate 60,000 votes? I don't know. Does that history that you create impact Dianne Feinstein or any of those other members of the Judiciary Committee to not show up. You denied 8 of our nominees 3 years ago a hearing because it was a year out from an election, and you're going to ram through Amy Coney Barrett with 3 weeks before the election? You have the ability to do it, but you're going to pay a political price. And anybody who participates, even a Democrat, is going to pay a political price. And then that becomes a mechanism to fire up your base. This is just one example. We have 30 years of this. We have Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, undermining the right for an abortion rhetorically. People forget that Obama was like, well, I don't think that Roe v. Wade was really settled. It was really decided in the proper way, blah, blah, blah. You're not in a constitutional law class anymore, Professor. You are the president of the United States, or you're running for the president of the United States.
And you're not making cases for process because no one actually gives a shit. You're making cases for rights and what actually affects people's lives.
The Democratic Party, and I mean, again, it's like this from Politico. Dems unite January 6th in Roe for a new battleground target. The heart of the approach, calling out Republican candidates' most hardline positions on multiple issues. Take, for example, the Republican hopeful who recently suggested rape victims were less likely to get pregnant, or the Republican who's defended the far-right militia, the Oath Keepers, alongside several more who have shared QAnon conspiracy theories with their supporters. All fine. Yes, you should point out, if you're running against someone who's a lunatic, you should point out that they're a lunatic. These are all these dangerous people running under the new MAGA Republican brand. They're going to pay a price for it. This is sort of a derivation of the ultra MAGA strategy that it took consultants in the Democratic Party to come up with for 6 months that Biden has been on. Now, I'm happy at least he says MAGA Republican. But this is where I wanted to basically shove this article into my throat to stop my breathing process. Is that a little extreme?
That's all right.
I think the point is that the MAGA Republicans are different than other Republicans, Maloney said when asked to explain why Democrats were leaning into the label, even as some party disagree with the tactic of borrowing Trump's preferred acronym. MAGA is an important distinction between the extreme elements of the Republicans and the old-fashioned version of the Republican Party that used to be less crazy. Even in explaining it, he negates what he's saying. They used to be less crazy. The Republican Party is all MAGA. There is no distinction. There is no good Republicans. You are giving them all an out, except for the ones who are the most extreme bat crazy ones.
And the ones that the reason they're making this distinction, one, they find Trump offensive, but two, now the Republicans are so crazy that they're forcing them into an uncomfortable position where sitting on their heels is not can't be their go-to. They have to act, and a lot of members of their party are saying that they have to act and be active in attacking their opponents as opposed to falling back on congeniality. That's really what pisses them off most about the ultra MAGA Republicans, is the fact that it's making them a little bit uncomfortable in their seats as the opposition party. They might have to oppose. They
also are trying to continue to go after these Republican suburban voters as if by suggesting that the Republican Party has left those voters. I mean, I personally, there's two questions. Is that where the focus of your electoral strength should be pursued? And the second one is that the best way to do it? I am extremely skeptical of the first premise. I think that's highly problematic to go after those people because both on an electoral standpoint, they're fickle, and on a coalition building, they are not going to take you in a place where you can pass policies that are going to be helpful for the future for the country and for working people and for the future of the party. But the way they're going about it is also ridiculous because you are giving them an out. You don't say there's still a place for you in the Republican Party and we're working towards making a better Republican Party for you if you're a Democrat. You're saying the Republican Party has left you. They are toxic. If you go there, you're going to get radioactive too. So there, you need to join us, not we're giving you an out to join them.
Well, this is what happens when the party's only focused on electoralism. It's the same thing. Go vote after Roe v. Wade. Go vote after this mass shooting. They can only see what's happening in November as a short-term, for short-term gains for themselves. If they wanted to build something, they would bury the Republicans, but they're not that interested in that.
Well, it's like, and I'd like to be the cynic or conspiratorial type to say that, oh, they're going after, like you said, these suburban Republican types, but it almost seems more like they're just meeting a psychological need for them and their closest supporters, which is that, like, it's not so bad. It's not like it's something like It's a Wonderful Life or something. Like, we can all come together and sing hands with our normal Republican friends who we do bipartisan deals with. It's
all these things. And I would add in, it's a consultant class that, doesn't want to cross a line because, they get there. A lot of them, their jobs are, just a function of during, elections. But when they're not doing elections, they're doing sort of like advertising and marketing. And maybe they're doing it for agencies where there's some Republicans and they don't want. It's all of these things combined that are, get into some toxic stew. And people can have different arguments as to which element is more or less operative at any given time. But all of it is a function of really horrible leadership. And so when AOC comes out there, she's giving you a vision of, a different approach to these politics. And it's,